the song, come on, let me see you get gone.
Get gone.
Baby mamas, this your song. Been pregnant for way too long. Now tell the DJ turn it off, turn it off.
If she a baby mom,
Go ahead.
she gon' do that baby mom.
Work.
So my last day pregnant before I have to go to the hospital for my 37-week C-section. It's Tajay today. Y'all, today I become a mother of 4. Lucky 4 little pretty. And this is me getting to the hospital to have them. And these are the lovely nurses that help. If it wasn't for my nurses, my C-section probably would have went worse.
Davonye, Yaya, Cummings was just 19 years old. A mother of 4. Her twins were only 11 days old. 11 days. That's it. But by the morning of March 2nd, 2025, everything changed. At 6:45 a.m., a quiet apartment on 74th Avenue in East Oakland became the scene of a tragedy. A young mother lying lifeless. No struggle. No screams. Her newborn twins, just a few feet away, slept unaware that their world had just been shattered. No 911 call. No desperate plea for help. Only silence. And the person responsible didn't flee. Didn't panic. They waited. Who could do such a thing? Who would take a mother away from her 11-day-old twins? What kind of man denies his babies the comfort of their mother? This wasn't just a fight that went too far. No, something else was at play here. It has to. But what? What happened in that apartment? Hold on, we'll get to that. First, let's look back at Davonye's life and see what led to that moment. Before we dig deeper into the truth. Welcome to Hidden Crime Network, where we dig into some of the most heart-wrenching and thought-provoking true crime stories. If you're here for the truth, unfiltered and untold, you're in the right place. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our updates. Trust me, you won't want to. And if you believe the stories of real victims deserve to be heard, drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from. Share this video. This is more than just a story. It's about justice. Don't wait. Stories that matter need to be heard. Let's step back now and look at who Davonye was before everything took a tragic turn. Davonye, Yaya, Cummings didn't have the luxury of a carefree childhood. She was born in Oakland, California, a place that can swallow you whole if you're not careful. By 13, life had already handed her a set of responsibilities no one should have to face. She became a mother at just 13. Her baby's father? A boy in the neighborhood. No plan. No marriage. Just a child and another child to care for. Her life? Survival. By 17, Davonye had 2 children. By 19, she was the mother of 4. And with each pregnancy came another relationship. Another promise of love that quickly turned sour. At 16, she met a man named BMG, another guy with a name she barely knew. They were both caught up in their world. Full of noise, full of drama. The kind that shakes you to your core. Yet Davonye found herself pregnant again. In 2022, she gave birth to her second daughter. She called her Miracle Child. It should have been a moment of joy, but instead, it felt like more weight on her already overloaded shoulders. She was still a teenager, still learning how to be a mother to her first child. And now another baby, another mouth to feed. But it didn't stop there. In 2023, Davonye's life took another hit. Bunga passed away suddenly. Some thought Davonye would feel relief, but she didn't. Instead, she reached out to the women he'd been with. She helped care for his children, even though they'd fought before. She had been through so much pain. Maybe it made her crave something different, something real. Even if she had never known it. She was tired. Tired of the fighting. Tired of the chaos. But still, she didn't know how to break free. In the same year, when she was just 17, Davonye found herself in another relationship. This time, it was with Terrence Miles. He was 31, nearly 13 years older than her. He promised her safety. He promised her love. But what he gave her was something far different. Terrence wasn't a stranger to the law. His violent past stretched across a long history of criminal convictions. Yet Davonye, desperate for stability, believed him when he said he'd protect her. Davonye tried to make it work with him. In early 2024, she found herself pregnant again. She hoped this time would be different. But in May of 2024, she miscarried. She lost a baby she had longed for. Still, despite the heartbreak, she clung to hope. By September 2024, Davonye was pregnant again. This time with twins. She thought it was a sign that things were finally turning around. But was it? Even as she tried to build a future, the tension between her and Terrence grew. Her relationship with him wasn't what it seemed. The calm was just the calm before the storm. But what happened next? Most people stop here. But this wasn't just the end of a relationship. It was the beginning of a nightmare. It was March 2nd, 2025. Early in the morning. Davonye had just finished feeding her twins, the little ones only 11 days old. She'd changed their diapers and placed them back into their crib, their tiny faces still peaceful in sleep. The apartment was quiet for now, with her two older children out of the house. But inside, things were far from peaceful. Terrence, her 32-year-old boyfriend, was there. He was supposed to be the one to protect her. But on that day, he wasn't. The tension between them had been building for days, maybe weeks. There was always something. Arguments. Insults. Blame. Terrence had been making cutting remarks, taunting her about how she wasn't doing enough, how she was acting helpless. A neighbor heard them shouting. But what about? Terrence's voice, angry and cold, echoed in the apartment. You've had kids before. Why are you acting helpless now? Davonye, exhausted from the stress of childbirth, struggled to keep her composure. She was still recovering from the C-section. But Terrence seemed not to notice that. The argument grew louder. Terrence didn't give her room to breathe. The insults kept coming. But then, there was a sudden, terrible silence. A gunshot rang out. A single shot. Davonye collapsed to the floor, the bullet tearing into her neck. But it didn't end there. Terrence didn't panic. He didn't scream for help. He didn't even try to save her. Instead, he called his mother. His words, "I shot her. I didn't mean to." What followed was chilling. Terrence didn't run. He didn't try to hide. He sat there calmly waiting. He didn't call 911. It wasn't until 10 minutes later that his mother finally made the call to the police. When they arrived, the scene was chilling. Davonye's body was sprawled across the floor. Blood soaked the ground beneath her. Her eyes were wide open, lifeless. In the crib next to her, the twins slept on, completely unaware of the horror unfolding just a few feet away. Terrence? He was sitting in the living room. No panic. No urgency. Just waiting. But what was really going on? Why didn't Terrence do anything? What was his plan? What was he hiding? This story is far from over. And the answers? They're more twisted than you think. Let's slow down for a second. We know what happened. Terrence shot Davonye. But was it really that simple? Think about it. Davonye had just given birth. She was vulnerable, exhausted, in pain. Yet Terrence, her partner, didn't try to help. He didn't even call 911. Instead, he called his mother. "I shot her. I didn't mean to." Why would he make that call? Why not 911? Here's the twist. Davonye had been looking for a way out. In the 48 hours before she was killed, she was searching for women's shelters in Oakland. She messaged family, asking if she could stay for a few days. Could this have been an act of control? A man desperate to keep her trapped, no matter the cost? Or was it something more? Now, here's the big question. Did Terrence shoot her in the heat of an argument? Or was this planned? Could it have been something he had been considering for days, maybe even longer? Look at the facts. The gun wasn't fired in a struggle. The bullet hit her neck, precise. He didn't run. He didn't panic. He waited. What's your take? Was this an impulsive act? Or a cold, calculated move? Accidental or intentional? But really, come to think of it, what would drive a man to kill the mother of his children and then calmly wait for the police? Drop your theories in the comments. What really happened that morning? Now let's look at who Terrence really was. Terrence Miles was 32, nearly 13 years older than Davonye. According to reports, Terrence wasn't new to the law. He had a criminal background, including convictions for assault with a deadly weapon. This raised serious questions about his ability to be the protector he promised to be. Davonye met Terrence in 2023 when she was just 17. At the time, she was already a mother of 2. Terrence, a familiar face in East Oakland, seemed to offer the stability Davonye desperately sought. According to those close to her, Terrence presented himself as a protector. He claimed he could give her a life away from the chaos she had known. He was known in the community as someone with a strong social presence. However, as their relationship deepened, things began to change. At first, he seemed like everything Davonye needed, but over time cracks began to show. He wasn't the man he claimed to be. Friends and family members later spoke about the controlling behavior that began to surface. One key detail emerged when investigators reviewed social media posts. In one video, Terrence was seen carrying a firearm, a Glock, an illegal possession for someone with his criminal history. Davonye knew about the gun, but she still believed his promises of safety. As time went on, the relationship became more toxic. Davonye had hoped things would get better. She wanted stability for her children. But Terrence's behavior started to show more signs of control. According to reports, Davonye began looking for a way out. She researched local women's shelters and reached out to family members, asking if she could stay with them. Terrence sensed this shift. The tension between them grew. Friends recalled how Davonye had begun to withdraw. Her once frequent social media posts became less frequent, and her messages started to sound more cryptic. She had become isolated, unsure of where to turn. The investigation into Davonye's death took a deeper turn as the police pieced together the shocking details. But the truth wasn't as simple as it seemed. When the police arrived at the apartment on 74th Avenue, the scene was hauntingly quiet. Terrence was sitting calmly in the living room, just as he had been when his mother first arrived. He didn't run. He didn't panic. There was no evidence of struggle, no urgency in his behavior. He simply waited for the officers to arrive. He didn't even attempt to save Davonye. When questioned, his response was chilling. "I shot her. I didn't mean to." But the evidence didn't match his words. The police quickly noted the lack of any signs of a struggle. There were no scratches, no bruises, no evidence that the situation escalated into a violent confrontation. No defensive wounds. Just a single, precise shot. The gunshot had struck Davonye in the neck. It was the kind of shot that could only be described as deliberate. Ballistics experts confirmed that it had been fired from a distance, not from close range, as Terrence had implied. No gunpowder residue, no close contact burns. The bullet had entered her neck in a way that showed it wasn't some haphazard mistake. Davonye's body lay still on the cold floor, eyes open, blood pooling around her. In the crib, her newborn twins slept on, unaware of the tragedy unfolding just a few feet away. Terrence sat there, his expression cold, as if nothing had happened. The officers were stunned by his calm demeanor. What happened in those moments between the shooting and the arrival of the police left everyone questioning what kind of man Terrence really was. And then came the most telling detail. The gun. It was found on the kitchen counter. A Glock, illegally owned by Terrence, who, as a convicted felon, was not allowed to possess firearms. The gun had been wiped clean, but not well enough. Faint smudges of fingerprints were left behind, enough to confirm that it had been used in the shooting. Forensic experts quickly noted that Terrence's fingerprints were found on the weapon, a key piece of evidence linking him directly to the crime. But there was something more. Terrence had waited to call 911. His mother was the one who made the call to the police, nearly 10 minutes after the shooting. By that time, the damage had been done. Davonye's life had already been stolen. As the investigation continued, the pieces of the puzzle began to fit together. But with each revelation, one question remained. Why had no one acted sooner? If you believe Davonye's story deserves justice, don't just watch, like, share, and make sure stories like this are heard. When Davonye was shot, the world lost a young mother with so much life left to live. But for her children, the loss was much more than just the death of a mother. Davonye's 4 kids, including her newborn twins, were left without the person who was supposed to care for them. Without her, they were left to face a world that already hadn't been kind to their family. Her twins, just 11 days old, will never know the warmth of their mother's embrace. They will grow up with the absence of a mother they will never remember, but one they will always need. Her two older children, they were not at home that morning, a fact that would later bring some relief to the family. But the grief, the trauma, it would find them. Even if they weren't in that apartment, the pain would follow them throughout their lives. Davonye had become the mother of 4 by the time she was 19. She had known pain. She had known sacrifice. But she had also known love for her children, despite everything that had gone wrong. Yet, her life was cut short by a man who was supposed to protect her, who was supposed to be a father to her children. But instead of protecting her, he took her away. He left her children with a future they never signed up for. The emotional toll was profound. Friends and family couldn't understand why it had to happen. They knew Davonye had been struggling, but they also knew how much she wanted better for herself and her children. She had been reaching out. She had been looking for a way out. But in the end, she didn't get that chance. Her family and the community were left to pick up the pieces, to raise 4 children without their mother, to carry the weight of a tragedy that should never have happened. The real question, for anyone who knew Davonye, was why didn't anyone help her sooner? Her story is not just a tragedy. It's a wake-up call, a reminder that sometimes we overlook the signs of pain right in front of us. We ignore the cries for help until it's too late. And now, Davonye's family must live with the consequences of a broken system, a system that failed to protect her when she needed it most. The aftermath of Davonye's death would bring more questions than answers. The community's response, the legal proceedings, there was much to be uncovered. The Oakland community was stunned by the brutal murder of 19-year-old Davonye Cummings, and their shock quickly turned to outrage. Her death wasn't just another tragedy. It was a clear failure of a system that was supposed to protect her. Davonye had been trying to escape the abusive relationship for days before her murder. She had researched shelters, reached out to family, and was looking for a way out. But she never got that chance. Davonye's death exposed the holes in both the police response and social support systems. Reports indicated that police had visited the apartment once before after hearing gunshots and reports of screaming. However, they didn't find any victims and left the scene. Hours later, when they returned, they found Davonye's lifeless body and Terrence sitting calmly in the living room, waiting for them to arrive. Neighbors later told investigators that they had heard loud arguments in the days leading up to the shooting. But there were no calls made to authorities to intervene earlier, which left the community grappling with feelings of guilt. Why hadn't someone stepped in sooner? It wasn't just the system that failed Davonye. Her community had seen the warning signs too. Friends, family, and even neighbors had heard whispers about the violence and tension in her relationship with Terrence, yet no one reached out to help in time. What if someone had stepped in? What if someone had noticed the signs and done more? Could Davonye still be alive today? The community, still reeling from the loss, began to demand justice for Davonye. They launched Yaya's Voice, a campaign to raise awareness of domestic violence, hoping that Davonye's death wouldn't be in vain. They wanted answers. They wanted change. And most importantly, they wanted justice for the young mother whose life had been stolen. As for Terrence, he was charged with first-degree murder, domestic violence resulting in death, and illegal possession of a firearm. Terrence's defense tried to argue that the shooting was accidental, a result of a domestic argument that spiraled out of control. But the evidence was damning. Ballistics showed that Davonye had been shot from a distance, with no signs of close-range contact or struggle. Fingerprints on the gun were traced back to Terrence, and the weapon had been wiped clean, indicating an attempt to cover his tracks. He didn't call 911 after the shooting. Instead, his mother was the one to make the call nearly 10 minutes later. The prosecution argued that Terrence had deliberately murdered Davonye, pointing to the evidence of premeditation and control in the relationship. His criminal history, which included several convictions, further painted a picture of a man with a propensity for violence. As the legal process began to unfold, Davonye's family was left with one question. Would the justice system truly deliver? The community had rallied behind them, demanding accountability for a life that was taken too soon. With the court proceedings now in motion, the question remained, would Terrence Miles face the consequences for his actions? Or would he find a way to escape the justice Davonye's family had been fighting for? Davonye Cummings' life was cut short at just 19. She had dreams of a future that would never come to be. She was a mother, a daughter, and a young woman who had already endured more than most people experience in a lifetime. From a young age, she was forced to grow up fast, caring for her children while grappling with a tumultuous past. Despite all the pain, she kept moving forward. She had hope, but that hope was shattered in an instant. A single shot that stole not just her life, but the future she had hoped to build for her children. Her twins, just 11 days old, will never know the comfort of their mother's touch. Her older children will grow up with memories of a mother who tried so hard to protect them. A mother who was taken too soon. In the wake of her death, her family has been left to pick up the pieces. They've been forced to carry the weight of a tragedy that could have been prevented. They are left asking, what if someone had heard her cries for help? What if the system had acted sooner? The community around them, too, is grappling with its own failure. The signs were there. People saw the tension, the arguments, and the fear. Yet, it wasn't enough. It never is until it's too late. Davonye's story serves as a reminder that domestic violence often goes unnoticed until it's too late. It's the silent screams, the hidden bruises, the isolation. We need to do better. We need to listen. We need to be the voices that speak for those who can't. Davonye didn't have a chance to live out her full potential, but we can make sure her story is heard. By sharing it, we honor her life and ensure that it won't be forgotten. Her legacy lives on in the fight for justice and in the lives of her children. They will carry her memory with them, and her story will inspire those who knew her to fight against domestic violence. Her death won't be in vain. Not as long as we continue to raise awareness, demand justice, and support the victims of abuse. If you believe Davonye's story deserves justice, if you believe we cannot let another tragedy like this be ignored, then don't just stay silent. Share this video, comment, and help raise awareness. Together, we can make sure no voice goes unheard. Until next time, remember, love should protect, not destroy. When we turn a blind eye to abuse, we become complicit. The cost of silence is too high. Speak out.